Okay. Where we are at the end of Toldot, so we are chapter 27, and I guess we're middle of the blessings. I guess page 137, or I guess 137 or 139. Okay, so we spoke about the stealing of the blessings in the last few weeks, and we spoke about different angles. So we said there's an angle that what Jacob did was the right thing, because for the legacy of Abraham to be preserved, that was the only way that it could be done. Because if Esau would be blessed, then Jacob would not be blessed, and Esau doesn't want to participate in the partnership, then the enterprise called the Abrahamic legacy would collapse. So he had no choice. So this was the best option of all the options. That was one view, that it was positive. There's also the other view that it was negative, and the Medrash points out that view and highlights, again, even though usually most of the classic commentators and the Medrash would say that what he did was perfectly fine under those circumstances. You have to be dishonest with someone who's dishonest, etc. So we're not going to rehash all those arguments, but there is sources in the Medrash that say that what he did was wrong, and therefore you look at his life, and the trickery comes back to haunt him. He is tricked by his father-in-law, he's tricked by his children, and it keeps coming back. And that's the source of all the tension in the family that ultimately leads to the exile in Egypt. So that's the two perspectives. You probably can pick one. You probably can actually live with a little bit of both, right? Because like we said last week, even if it's the right thing to do under these circumstances, but it is negative, if there's some negativity in the approach, not by any fault of your own, there still is the price to pay. So you have a choice to read first way, second way, or a combination of both. Okay. Now, I'm only saying this to try not to go back there, because I want to move forward, not forward. I want to go to another dimension. And the other dimension is the Kabbalistic dimension. But to address the Kabbalistic dimension, we have to put all the other issues to rest. Let's put the moral question to rest, right? Is it right or is it wrong? Because we're not going to be able, we're trying to get a little bit more Kabbalistic, okay? And from the Kabbalistic perspective, there is importance, there's significance that the Jew gets the blessing with what they call mirma, with how do they translate mirma? Trickery. How do they translate mirma? Let's see. I'm looking for example on page 139, chapter 27, verse 35. Your brother came with cleverness. Oh, that's nice. That's a nice translation. Cleverness, right? You see what they're trying to do. Mirma, it's not such a bad translation. Onkelos, the translation of the Torah into Aramaic, which is right here, sitting right next to the Hebrew, translates in Chav Zayin. If you know a little Aramaic, and you should know Aramaic because Aramaic is so close to Hebrew. V'amar, and he said, Al achuch. Maybe Bob is here, help me with the Arabic. Achuch is achicha, your brother, right? B'mirma b'chachmata, with wisdom. So we'll talk about that for a second. But the bottom line is mirma, the common word of mirma is trickery. The snake was clever in chapter 3 in Genesis. That's the introduction to the story.
What was the word for the snake?
Arum. The Torah says v'nachash haya arum. In chapter 3, we're gonna try to link these two stories. Chapter 3 of Genesis, it talks about the introduction of the snake, the introduction of the story of the tree of knowledge, and it begins by saying.
Wasn't the snake?
So again, they translate the same word. Here they translate cunning. The serpent was cunning in chapter 3 of Genesis. And here they translate when Jacob says, when Isaac, the father, tells Esau, your brother came with mirma, I would say cunningness, but they're nice. They quote the Medrash, they quote the Targum, they quote Rashi, who quotes the Targum and says, b'chachmata, wisdom. So the the line between cunningness and wisdom and cleverness, they say cleverness, the line between cunningness and wisdom and cleverness is not always so clear. Sometimes it takes a certain degree of cleverness to be cunning, right? Rashi says when the first time we read Yaakov Ish Tam, Yaakov is a wholesome man or simple man, or I don't know how exactly how to translate Tam. Rashi says, what's Tam? Anyone who's not sharp to deceive is called Tam. Right? It takes a certain shrewdness. If I say someone is shrewd, it has some wisdom, and it could imply negativity, it could imply positivity. I'm just saying it's a tricky word. What am I saying here? I'm going back to the Kabbalistic perspective. Again, we're going to try to suspend all moral judgment. We're going to try to look from the Kabbalistic perspective and say something to the effect that God could have orchestrated things otherwise. In other words, Jacob, let's say Jacob is destined to receive the blessings. Why does Jacob have to receive the blessing in a way that requires, I'll translate the way it's translated in chapter 3, cunningness? Why can't it be straightforward? Father calls son, father blesses child, wonderful. He realizes that Jacob is the one deserving. He blesses Jacob, and everybody lives happily ever after. He doesn't have to flee to Haran. He doesn't have to marry the wrong sister. He doesn't have to have multiple wives. He doesn't have to have the jealousy in the family because he loves Joseph. He loves Joseph, the wife, the son of the younger son, but the son of his beloved wife. And the brothers don't have to sell Joseph, et cetera, et cetera. So why does it have to be orchestrated this way? So from the Kabbalistic perspective, these blessings have to come to Jacob, but they have to come through cunningness. Okay. And the scene where Jacob is receiving the blessing and presenting himself as Esau also has significance, in the sense that's the ideal. The ideal is that you have Jacob with the garments of Esau. In other words, what I'm trying to say is, when you're going to read this story from the perspective of the Kabbalah, we're going to suspend judgment and say, this is the way it was supposed to happen. What is the significance of this? What do we take from our life, from the understanding that that there has to be cunningness, there has to be cunningness. Jacob has to be blessed. Jacob is wearing the garments of Esau. And one more element that we're going to tie everything in is that when Isaac blesses his son, he doesn't really understand who he's blessing. That's also part of the mix. And maybe he thinks he's blessing Esau and blessing Jacob. In other words, God wants it to happen from the Kabbalistic perspective. God wants it to happen in this convoluted way. Number one, he's trying to be cunning. He is presenting himself as what he's not. Father is blessing. He's also operating sort of in the blind. He doesn't really understand what he's doing. And that's the way the blessing was supposed to come. How come? That's what we have to try to do the next couple of minutes. Go ahead, Steve.
I have a question. In the text, it's very clear that Yitzhak's eyes had grown big. Is there any commentary or any phrase that alludes to perhaps his mental capacity?
Yes, I deleted it from my notes because I thought it's not going to be interesting, but yes. And they say,
Well, I think it's very important.
it is very important. It is very important. If I say everything there is to say, we're not going to get anywhere. We're going to be, we'll be going backward. So go ahead. Let me respond to Stephen, then we'll take your. Let's go back to the verse that introduces Isaac's state, physical or mental state, at the beginning of this episode. So it's on page 135. And it became to pass when Isaac had become old. Right? And it came to pass when Isaac had become old, and his eyes dimmed from seeing. Right? Techena means that it was weakened, I think. Weakened, yeah. His eyes dimmed from seeing. And he summoned Esau, his older son, etc., etc. Okay. When I read this verse, I say he's old, he can't see. And often that also the physical decline also comes along with a mental decline. That's what you would not be forgiven to think that, right? I hope it's not the case because I'm already wearing my bifocals. You can't see it because it's continuous, but I hope that doesn't mean mental decline. The commentaries point out that's not the case, and therefore Rashi brings three reasons why he can't see. He wasn't that old in relation. He was old, but not in the relation to how long he lived. He lived to 180. This is at this point he's 120 if you do the math. But let's put that aside. Let's just look at the text. If you want to write this verse, and we know the Torah is very careful with not to speak too many extra words. Every word is precise. So if I wanted to say this verse, what would I say? I would say, and it came to pass when Isaac, what would happen if I would read the verse as follows? And it came to pass when Isaac had become old and his eyes dimmed, that he summoned Esav. Everything is fine. But the Torah adds one word. In the English, it's two words, but in the Hebrew, it's one word. Meiraot, from seeing. His eyes became dimmed from seeing. Isn't that repetitious? His eyes became dimmed. Let's hear what at least what some commentaries say. They say his eyes became dimmed from seeing, which means it was only physical. They emphasize he could not see. His eyes became dim, but eyes in biblical Hebrew, eyes can also be a euphemism for wisdom. Right? You say I see. You say a person can't see. Right? In the Torah, in Leviticus, there's a verse you can't put that a person is not allowed to place. You shall not place a stumbling block before the blind. And all the commentaries say it doesn't only mean the physical blind person. I mean, that's obvious. You're going to cause someone to get hurt. All the commentaries say it means don't give somebody bad advice. How do you get to bad advice and don't place a stumbling block before the blind? Blind is somebody who's intellectually in this matter doesn't have clarity, can't see intellectually. So don't put a stumbling block before it's blind. So that's the starting point. So the commentaries say, I forget who says it, I have to go back and check, that it says his eye, if it says his eyes were dimmed, you would say, oh, his mental capacity has also been dimmed. But if you emphasize his eyes became dimmed from seeing, that's pulling it back specifically to the physical state of the eyes, the physical eyes. And Mark is here. So Mark he talks about the physical eyes, but sometimes the physical eyes is not necessarily a sign for spiritual decline. So that's just to address. You asked me if I saw any commentaries. That's the commentary I saw. That it was specifically adds the words eyes became dimmed from seeing, because if it says eyes became dimmed, you could say maybe it has a broader meaning. And if it says, and he's still discerning, he comes and he understands this is it not? Your voice is the voice of Esav, the voice is the voice of Jacob, the hands of Esav, etc. So the point here is that that at least some commentaries explain that what we're trying to do here is keep it specifically to the domain of the physical. And that's what Meiraot, from seeing. His eyes became dimmed from seeing. If you said his eyes became dimmed, you could say, oh, that has broader implications. It's a nice way of saying he's getting what they used to call in Yiddish, a rebuttal, becoming a little bit senile.
Maybe he chose, what God chose, to do that. And maybe he was tired and didn't like what he was seeing all along. Sometimes people, when they are upset with things, they kind of give up.
Yeah.
And maybe he sort of was giving up on, he was upset with Esau, he was upset maybe with Jacob.
Yeah.
And maybe he said, I don't care.
I don't want to know. Okay.
And that, to me.
Okay, you're saying something very important, and that's why I can't resist. And we have to open up the verses, and we're going to have to look at what Rashi said. There's three interpretations in Rashi, which is actually very unusual. Rashi usually gives how many interpretations? Whenever he can get away with one, he gets away with one. When he can't get away with one, he says two. And the Rebbe always explains two interpretations means that the first one is better, but it's not perfect. The second one fills in for something that the first one does not do. We spoke about that on Wednesday at great length. Three interpretations is very rare. And here we have three interpretations. So I'm going to share the screen for those who are on Zoom, because I don't think Rashi, or maybe they do have it. Do they have it here? Yeah, they have it here in English too. If you want to look at page 135 on the bottom where it says number one, on his eyes dimmed from seeing, Isaac was 123 years old. Then accordingly, the year was 2171 from creation. And then Rashi offers three interpretations. So I'm just going to read from the my version, because that's the actual translation, not just redone. So I want to be loyal to Rashi precisely. So I'm going to share the screen. Just because you're sitting here doesn't mean you can't turn on the Zoom. No, I'm kidding. You don't need a Zoom. Okay, so I'm kidding. Okay, his eyes became dim. I'm going to read 3 interpretations, and then at least the first one resonates with exactly what maybe even the second one. The first one certainly resonates with what Seth is saying. Why does his eyes become dim? So you have to look. You have to look.
Maybe he was mad at his wife
Oh,
also.
1 second.
She was.
Maybe. Let's read Rashi.
also.
Let's read Rashi before we go.
He was
Before
mad at-
let's read Rashi. Before we did I skipped one verse back. I skipped one verse back, and I went to the end of chapter 26, and I'm on page 133, verse 34. When Esav was 40 years old, and he married Judith, beautiful name, Yehudit, which is Yehudit. Now, but at the point is, but it doesn't mean Jewish because there was no Jewish then, because Jewish is only from Judah, and Judah wasn't born yet. Okay. In any case, Judith, the daughter of Be'eri, the Hittites, and Basmat, daughter of Elon, the Hittite. So he's marrying a Hittite and 2 Hittite women. Hittite is local girls. We know later that Abraham wasn't happy with the local girls, neither was Isaac. Okay. And they were a vexation of the spirit to Isaac and to Rebekah. I like to confirm the clock, it's being recorded, so I don't know if I should confirm it, but I have no idea what vexation means. Vexation of spirit. Annoyance.
To vexate is to annoy someone.
Okay.
Couldn't deal with it.
Rashi says that Morat Ruach, not just annoyed, but they would defy the words. He quotes the verse, Mamrim Hayitem, when Moshe tells the Jewish people, you defied God in the desert. So in other words, these women, the daughters-in-law, not the first time daughters-in-law can't get along with their in-laws, but they were Morat Ruach. They caused vexation, annoyance, but they also define. Oh, Rashi here says, Hebrew Morat Ruach, an expression of defiance of spirit, like you have been rebellious. All of these were to provoke and to grieve, from Targum and Onkelos. In other words, Esav's daughters-in-law were rebellious against Isaac and Rebekah. What does it mean? Probably what it means is they were idol worshippers. And that's what the next Rashi is going to imply. So they come home and they're worshiping idols. If you're Isaac, Abraham's son, you can't handle it. So what happens? He becomes blind. Now it means literally, figuratively, Setsis means he doesn't want to see. Okay, so let's read Rashi. Says Rashi, the next verse, right, turn the page to page 135. And it became to pass when Isaac became old and his eyes dimmed from seeing. The commentaries say 1 second, Isaac became old, he's not so old. In terms of how long he lived, he's not so old. So they say, oh, that's the juxtaposition between Esav's wives and Isaac becoming blind. There's a connection between the two. What's the connection? Says Rashi, because of the smoke of these wives of Esav who would burn incense to the idols. What is that telling you? That the idols make him blind, the smoke makes him blind. What does that mean? The Rebbe says it's not really so literal because Isaac wasn't the only one in the home. If the smoke harms Isaac, should have harmed everybody else. But it means that was especially troubling to him because of the idol worship. It was not so much the smoke, but it's the smoke of idol worship. Okay, without getting into all of that, but it's something to do. He's not happy with them, and he's sort of separating himself from society. That's really what's happening. He's being blinded. He doesn't want to see what's going on because in his own home, he has the idol worship.
He's blinding himself.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is what the Medrash is saying. It's just saying it in different words. That's what I think. Another explanation, when Isaac was bound on the altar and his father was about to slaughter him, the heavens opened and the ministering angels saw and wept, and their tears fell upon Isaac's eyes. As a result, his eyes became dim. What are you going to do with this? He was on the altar. His father wanted to slaughter him. The angels cried. The tears of the angels fell on his eyes, and he became blinded. This is obviously Medrash, because this is not the Pshat. First of all, angels don't have tears. And if they have tears, I don't know how they blind you. And the bigger problem is this has been years and years and years. The Akedah was when he was 37 years old. Now he's 123. Why did he become later?
Maybe God gave the angels tears to cry down.
And then he started crying decades later and became blind decades later.
Isn't there Midrash as well that it's Abraham's tears?
Maybe. I don't know all the Midrashim. I'm just showing you what Rashi's saying here, that it's the angels. What I think it means, it's the Midrash. What I think it means, one of two things. Either it means he has the trauma from when his father was trying to slaughter him. You could say that. But what I really think it means is that he's still on the altar. Seth just said that what blind means, I'm not discerning. I don't want to look at what people are doing. I really want to separate myself. I'm not interested. I'm separating myself. Why am I separating myself? One of two reasons. Either because around me there's idol worship, or the opposite. I'm so intensely spiritual. I'm not interested in I'm not taking the paying attention to what's going on around me. And when you say he's still on the altar, to me, what that means is, what is the altar? The altar means he wants to be sacrificed to God. He doesn't want to be in this world, right? So he's a totally spiritual person. His kids are getting along, not getting along. He's in the house. Sometimes the father's home, but he's not really home, right? He's thinking about he wants to be in heaven, right? So to me, that's a second interpretation. So what I hear Seth saying that Isaac is blind, and it doesn't mean physical. It doesn't mean mentally. It means that he's not looking. Why does it mean he's not looking? He's not discerning. He's not investing himself to figure out what exactly is happening. So he's withdrawn. Now, why is someone withdrawn? To me, what this Medrash says, the first interpretation is he's withdrawn because he doesn't like what he sees in his house because of the smoke of the idol worship. There's too much pain. It's too much pain. But what's happening in his house is morat ruach. What the verse says, and it's not Rashi. The verse says morat ruach. The verse says vexation of spirit. But what Rashi says, Targum morat ruach means that defiance. So they're serving idols in Isaac's time. Could you imagine Isaac, the son of Abraham, who preaches monotheism in his own home? The daughters-in-law are serving idols. He doesn't throw them out, by the way, which is also a good thing. Never pick a fight with your in-law, with your children-in-law. Not going to end well. But what happens to him, he's withdrawn. So either he's withdrawn because of this negative situation in the home, or he's withdrawn because he's too intensely spiritual, not because of what's happening, because of his own state of being. And the third interpretation, says Rashi, third explanation, to enable Jacob to take the blessings. Genesis Rabbah. In other words, it's all part of God's plan. If he wasn't blind, if he could see clear, then the story would end differently. God wants the story to happen in this way.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Sometimes the father will say, the only way my son or daughter is going to learn anything is if they make a mistake. I'm going to let them make the mistake. And he knew later that those curses or those things you talked about were going to be the only way that Jacob could learn to influence himself. He was influenced by his mother. Maybe the only way, I don't know, but if I had enough ajah, I would say, go do what you want to do. You're going to learn the hard. And maybe he thought that. I don't know. Is that a possible midrash?
I think you're saying your big point is that Isaac is withdrawing. And
Yeah, either one way
or the other. And I think that the two interpretations in Rashi are consistent with what you're saying. It's not exactly what you're saying. If you read it literally, no. But I'm just saying. But I think that if you read it a little bit more poetically, not just simple interpretation. First interpretation of Rashi, you could say, without getting into the details too much. Second interpretation of Rashi is certainly he's withdrawn. It doesn't mean simply. It doesn't mean the angels cried at the Akedah. It just can't. That's obvious. It must be a deeper message, right? It's a medrash. It's not pshat. So I think it means he's withdrawn. Why is he withdrawn? Either because of what's happening, the negative things in the house, or because he himself is just intensely spiritual. Now, does that mean that he's not physically, mentally able to differentiate? He is, but he has to be interested, and he's not really interested. Why? He's withdrawn.
Maybe he's disgusted with the whole thing.
I think that's the first interpretation. That's what you say, the smoke of Esau's wives. That to me, that everything you're going to say, I'm just trying to categorize. Everything you're going to say is in that category. There's stuff in the house that he doesn't like, and he's saying, I don't want to see it. Right? It's like my kids. I tell my kids, I'm not home. They say, you're home. I say, no, I'm not home. It looks like I'm here. I'm not here. When they make trouble. That's a good question, but I think I do it because my father used to do it. So I don't know that it's effective. Because I'm not home. I say, you are home. I said, no, I'm not here. Go speak to your mother. I'm not here. I say, okay, fine. I don't remember if it works. To me, it's just that's what you do. It's just habit. Okay, go ahead. Yes, Vicky, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. We didn't state all the three interpretations of Rashi, and I was just thinking maybe the other interpretation would be that he's not withdrawn, but just chose to overlook because he doesn't want to get involved with the family conflict. And that kind of resonates with the blessings because he maybe understands what's going on, but just doesn't want to, just chose to overlook it, not to
He doesn't want to look too deeply, and I think that there is,
interfere.
and I think there is something to be said, because to me, the strangest part of the story, when he says the voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands are the hands of Esau. Come here, let me feel you. If you think that this may not, you can't figure out which son it is, and there's a lot at stake, which is the blessing. Call somebody, find out, investigate. He touches him, and then he says, "What's the conclusion?" The voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands in the hands of Esau. And then he proceeds to bless him. Like what? So find out. If you have different input, you're not sure what the situation is at Esau or Jacob, and you have conflicting indicators. So investigate further. He doesn't investigate further.
Could he know it was a trick and then say to his
Maybe he
son,
knows. I don't know what he knows. He doesn't say what he knows, but I know enough to know that there's enough things that require further investigation. He starts investigating, and the conclusion is contradictory. The voice is the voice of Jacob, and the hands of Esau. So you would expect to so further the investigation. He doesn't continue the investigation. So I think that means he's withdrawn, and either that means he's not interested, or it means let whatever happens, or let if again, there are different interpretations. I don't remember if I said this interpretation, but I'll say it now, even though again, that this is all, I really want to get to the Kabbalah. So I'm going to say the last thing on this subject, and then we'll go to the Kabbalah. There's one interpretation that says, at this point in my life, I don't remember who said what, because I'm getting old, I can't see. So my mental capacity to remember is being dimmed. I only see what I want to see. That's true. That's a good point.
Don't worry about the bifocals. Put them in the refrigerator when you get home.
You haven't told us yet you're not here.
I can't tell you how many times I put things in the freezer that belong in the closet. I put my keys in the freezer. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm there already. Okay. Because I'm distracted because I'm thinking about good things, not because I can't see. Okay. What am I saying? Oh, there is an interpretation, take it or leave it, put it into one of the categories of this is one of the categories that explain that Esau did the right thing, that Jacob did the right thing. And it also, we can start categorizing all the various interpretations, what Isaac, the father's state of mind was. So this is the general interpretation that says Isaac understood what was happening here. He's not as tricked as the simple verse would lead you to believe. Again, I'm not fully comfortable with this because he says he was frightened, but
He loved Esau.
we can't rehash everything. Let me just say one point. Let me go to the Kabbalah. The point is like this: he wants to bless Jacob. He can't bless Jacob because Jacob is the kid who cannot manage in this physical world. He's very spiritual, very intense. We really can't navigate the physical world. To navigate the physical world, you need cleverness, you need cunningness, and Jacob has no cunningness. And if you have no cunningness, you're not going to survive for 4,000 years. It's as simple as that. It's a question of I don't want to say survival of the fittest, but yes, it's a challenging place. And if you're not going to have the cunningness, you're not going to survive. Esau is cunning. So he wants to bless Esau, and like I said before, Esau and Jacob make a partnership, and Esau will be cunning. He'll take care of the finances. He'll take care of the protection of the land of Israel, and Jacob will do the studying, and everything will be live happily ever after. I think Sham Shinfal here says this, by the way, that what I'm about to say. Comes Esau. No, I don't know if he says it. Comes Jacob, and Jacob dresses himself up as Esau, and he says, "I'm Esau, your son." Now, if you're a father and your one son comes and is on the other son, are you going to fall for it? Of course not. He doesn't fall for it. He says, "Come here. Let me feel you." He feels him. And what does he say? He says, "The voice is the voice of Jacob. The hands are the hands of Esau." And therefore what? Therefore you think it's Esau? That would be a ridiculous conclusion. Investigate further. What's easier? Obviously, it's easier to change what you're wearing than to change your voice. It's just totally strange. So one interpretation says, Baruch Hashem, you're cunning too. Now I can bless you. If you're the person that if you could present yourself as Esau, wonderful. Then you get the blessings, because I would that's what I needed to begin with. I'm only blessing your brother because you can't be cunning. If you could be cunning, Mazel Tov, you could be cunning. Now, again, it's hard to read this verse. It's hard to explain it this way because later on the verse says he's frightened. Whatever the case, Isaac, when Esav comes in, he's frightened. Yitzchak is frightened. But again, why did I say this? I forgot. Why did I say this interpretation? I said this interpretation, I forgot why.
Because it's similar to what was his attitude towards the daughters-in-law, Esav's.
Oh, no, I said it, I think I said it because the point
He
is,
chose to overlook. He chose to not to
not just
know.
overlook, but the point is what Seth said of figure it out by yourselves. If it's Esav, it's Jacob, whoever, in other words, like this, whoever gets here first is the one deserving. In other words, how do I say this?
No, but with daughters-in-law, he just didn't want to interfere. And-
Yeah,
but
that who's which one? If you want to take that interpretation, I read recently a book about the Israeli politics. I'm sorry, I'm in the zone because the election is on Tuesday. So they talk about politics, and sometimes it's very strange that somebody you win and who wins and who doesn't win. And the guy writes, he says, the electorate basically rewards certain attributes of a politician. Whether or not they're good attributes is another story. One attribute that the electorate rewards is you have to really want the job. If you don't really want the job, you're not going to get the job. And if you really want the job, there's a chance you get the job. And the electorate wants the person who really wants the job. That's the political theory. So who should get the blessing? Maybe the person who really wants the blessing. So the father's sitting there. He tells the older son, I want to bless you. He thinks maybe the younger son's going to come in. Who gets the blessing? Whoever really wants it is the one that's going to get it. Whoever comes first. That's part of the idea that the father is sort of taking hands-off approach. Why would he do that? Depending on how you want to read the story. But that's the thing. Seth gets the last word. Then we go to the Kabbalistic interpretation. Please, go ahead. I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it that way. Go ahead.
Well, it just, we're not including Rebecca in this, and the Jacob, he just listened to his mother. He's
Right.
old enough
Right.
to make a decision for himself.
Right.
And, we all listen to our mothers. I listen to my mother. But in the end, I hopefully made the decision, like he didn't.
He didn't.
And so
Right.
maybe he really wasn't cunning. And maybe he just listened to what he was told to do and was afraid actually to, disobey his mother. And maybe Isaac also saw that as well and said, I'm not going to get him. I'm not going to go against Rebecca. I'm just going to pull away. I'm going to do.
Okay.
And they're
So
going to
Seth
learn
is
later
saying,
on
that's
themselves.
very clever,
Yeah.
very, very clever. You're saying like this, you're saying,
Clever.
assuming Isaac understands his children, and assuming Isaac knows that Jacob is incapable of being cunning. So Isaac is sitting there. Let's think about this. Isaac is sitting there, and Jacob comes before him and tries to trick him. So what does Isaac know? Is this Jacob? Of course it's not Jacob. It's Rebecca. It's Rebecca's plan. So it's Rebecca signaling to him that this blessed Jacob. So Seth says, okay, I'll do what my wife wants. That's what Seth said. I like that. That's why we get together, to get new perspectives. I like that. Okay, I want to go back to the Kabbalah. And again, all judgment is off the table. We're not talking about what was right or what was wrong. We're talking about we're assuming that God wants Jacob to get the blessings. And we're assuming it has to be in a way of cunningness, which we're going to address the cunningness in a moment, but put that aside for a second. What we're going to address now, it has to come in a way that Isaac does not understand who he's blessing and why he's blessing. In the Kabbalistic terminology, it has to be higher than dat, higher than knowledge. There's the way you operate with a conscious, calculated mind, and then you do certain things that are sort of beyond that. And the blessings have to come from a place that's beyond the reason and beyond calculation and beyond Isaac's capacity to understand. Because this concept makes no sense.
I didn't take anything out of it, though.
I'm sorry? Oh. The concept of Isaac blessing Jacob with these blessings make no sense. So where does it have to come? If it's going to come, it's going to go in a way that bypasses the discerning mind. If you would ask Isaac, does it make sense to bless Jacob? He would say, of course not. Explain why. And therefore, it has to come. We're doing something that defies logic. The blessing here defies logic. And therefore, the only way it can come through, it can't come through Isaac's rational mind. And therefore, it has to bypass Isaac's rational mind, and therefore he has to think he's blessing one person and he blesses another person. In the language of the Kabbalah, it's higher than that, it's higher than knowledge. What's so higher than knowledge? What's so difficult to understand here? So we already discussed this, the ingredients of this interpretation we already discussed, which is that what are the blessings here? What does he bless him with? Not the blessing, the spiritual blessing, the blessing of Abraham that he doesn't bless. What does he bless this person who he thinks he's blessing Jacob? He blesses him, it's all physical blessings. Verse 28, page 139. May God give you of the dew of the heavens, the fatness of the earth, and abundant grain and wine.
Who's he blessing there?
He thinks it's Jacob, he thinks it's Esau, but he's blessing Jacob.
But yet that's exactly what Esau got.
That's another question. We'll keep that a second. First, we'll keep that for a second. He blesses Jacob and he says, God should give you, he's blessing Jacob, but he doesn't know he's blessing Jacob. But what is it? It's all physical. Dew of the heavens, fatness of the earth, abundant grain and wine, and then people shall serve you, regimes will prostrate themselves before you, physical might, you'll be a lord of your kinsmen, and your mother's sons will prostrate themselves to you. Cursed be those who curse you, and blessed be they who bless you. In other words, physical blessing. Now, Jacob is a spiritual person. To say that the spiritual person should be blessed with physical abundance and physical wealth is not something logical. Why is it not logical? Look at all the other faiths. Most faiths believe that if you want to be spiritual, you have to escape from materialism. You have to go to the monastery. You have to go to you have to go meditate. You have to go away from society. Don't talk. Don't be involved with people. Don't marry. And that's the only way to be spiritual, because spirituality and materialism is a conflict. That's the logical approach. And that makes sense. But that's not the Jewish approach. The Jewish approach is we're doing something that defies logic. That you could have a lot of grain and a lot fatness of the earth. You can have an army. You can be successful. People can prostrate themselves for you. You're successful in the material realm. And yet that success is not a contradiction to spirituality. Says the Kabbalah, the Alter Rebbe writes it based on the Kabbalah. He writes it in his commentary on this parsha. He says that is beyond doubt. That's beyond logic. Isaac could not understand, especially his own life. Remember, his own life, he's a sacrifice. He doesn't leave Israel. He's completely divested from materialism. He's very introverted. He's not into being out in the world and being invested in commerce in the physical world. And to him, he's a logical fellow. To him, physical and spiritual cannot work together. You cannot bless your spiritual son with physical blessing. First of all, it's not going to work. He's not going to be able to increase the portfolio and expand the holdings. So the physical won't be successful. But more importantly, it's going to distract from the spiritual, because logically these things don't work together. The reality is, however, that Judaism says, no, of course, the spiritual blessing has to go. The physicality and spirituality are not a contradiction. Both created by God. Both can be harnessed for one overarching purpose of the service of God. But this is not dot. This is not logic. Doesn't make sense. This doesn't add up. In the logical realm, this makes no sense. And therefore, the Kabbalah would say that's why this story in this physical world played out in a way that the spiritual blessings come to Jacob in a way that Isaac doesn't know what he's doing, which means it doesn't make sense to him to do so, and it defies reason, defies the calculation. In other words, he's not aware. It defies awareness, logical awareness. He's not aware what's happening, because what's happening is what happens defines logic. We know what could be done. Torah tells us all about it. The whole Torah is about 613 ways to sanctify the physical, but this is not something that is logical. And therefore, it's played out in a way that defies logic. That's the first step. That's the first step of the Hasidic interpretation, which is we have to understand what we are doing here. What we do in this world, what Judaism, what Jews have been doing for 3,300 years is unbelievable. It's not logical. We do it because we have a place it comes from a place that's deeper than logic. But even according to even spiritual logic doesn't see how you can live a spiritual lifestyle and be engaged in the physical world. It seems like a contradiction, but it's not a contradiction. But that's deeper than logic. So that's the first step. Now, just to add a little bit, just to make it more exciting, and you want to make it more exciting, just to jazz it up, like they say. The Kabbalah says, the Arizal writes that the Rebecca is the reincarnation of Eve.
Oh.
And Jacob is a reincarnation either of Adam or of Hevel, depending on where you want to read. So what does that do for us? And then the Kabbalah compares the word mirma. There is the concept of cleverness that happens in the story of the blessings, and the mirma that happens in the story of the Garden of Eden, of the tree of knowledge. Okay, so we're linking these two stories. We'll get back to the
They
link.
both listen to their wives.
They both listened to their wives, but in that sense, it was done in a negative way. And this is the replay to correct it. In Kabbalah, with the whole idea of Gilgulim, of reincarnation, the point is that sometimes the first time around, all the ingredients are there, but it doesn't play out in the proper way. And therefore, there's a replay, and you can correct the past. And you correct the past, it comes out in a higher way. It's called tikkun. So the Kabbalah will tell you that the mirma, the cleverness, the cunningness of Rebecca and Jacob is correcting the cunningness of the tree of knowledge, of that story. You can take this in all different ways. To stay focused on this way, what is the Kabbalistic view of the tree of knowledge, the story of the tree of knowledge? The story of the tree of knowledge, from a Kabbalistic perspective, was that there used to be a division between good and bad, physical and good and bad. And the tree of knowledge, basically, the problem with the tree of knowledge of good and evil is that this tree represents the mixing of good and evil. And according to the Kabbalah, the cosmic result of the tree of knowledge is that in this world, good and evil are mixed. And therefore, there's no such thing as good without evil, and there's no such thing as evil without good. So even if someone's very righteous, there's always could be some degree of ulterior motive, right? Nobody is ever perfect. You always have some selfishness. The flip side is nothing is 100% negative, because even something that's 100% negative has some good in it. So the way the sages say, "Ein tov b'li ra, ein ra b'li tov." There's no good without bad. There's no bad without good. Sort of a mixing and a fusing of the positive and the negative in a negative way. In some sense, what we're doing is we're also mixing physical and spiritual, but in this story, we're doing it in a positive way, because what we're saying is that Jacob should not be segregated or relegated to the only error to the dimension of spirituality, but he should be blessed with the physical produce as well, with the physical success as well. So there is a way to mix physical and spiritual, but in the Garden of Eden, it was done in a negative way, and now it's going to be done in a positive way. Now is the tikkun, now is the correction. So this is a little bit of the Kabbalistic approach of these stories. Says the Kabbalah, just to conclude, he says, if not for this blessing, the Torah that we would get would only be a spiritual Torah. If not, Jacob, when Jacob gets the blessings of Isaac, that you should get the fat of the land, and the dew of the heaven, and the fat of the land, we would have a spiritual Torah. What's our job? To connect to spirituality. The Torah would not be involved in physical commandments. Now that Jacob receives the physical blessings, now the Torah could impact the physical world, and therefore we have physical commandments. So again, this is what are we trying to do here? We're trying to explain that the spiritual reason why Jacob has to receive the blessings, and he has to receive them in a way that is not with Isaac's consciousness, because this concept of connecting the physical and the spiritual defies logic. There's no logical way to do so. In other words, logically, it would be a contradiction. How do you get both? That's the divine blessing. God gives us the capacity to do both. Go ahead.
When in Adam and Eve, they ate the apple, then God said, now you have to find out. Now you see what's going on.
Yeah.
So he gave us a freedom of choice. And we could decide to be good, or we could decide to be bad.
Yes.
Isaac is doing the same thing and saying, Jacob, you can decide to be good, and you can decide to be bad. So actually, maybe he was aware, and he thought this was the entire way to get this resolved. They're going to figure it out. And they actually came together, which is really a good way. They figured to come together. and meet each
Right.
other.
Yeah,
and-
yeah,
and
that's-
join. So maybe maybe he was so holy and spiritual, Isaac.
That you're saying he did know, that's fine, yeah, that's a legitimate
I don't
interpretation.
know. First I said he didn't know. Now I
It's
say
all
he
good,
did
it's
know.
all good, it's all good, the story
Maybe
has,
Joe's got the-
that's the brilliance of the story, the multiple dimensions. I want to say, I just want to say that I want to go back to the Kabbalah and just to say it, to highlight it in one way, just to make clarify. When a person sins, the first sin is the tree of knowledge. But every sin, you're mixing physical and spiritual. You're taking your spiritual energy, the energy of your soul, and you're investing it in a physical act that is corrupt. In fact, some commentaries say the word avera. What is avera? Sin. If you, what's the etymology of sin? I don't know. What's the etymology of avera? The word is not so bad. Avera means lahavir, to pass.
To miss the mark.
I'm sorry? To miss the mark. To miss the mark. That's one.
It's also the word for Hebrew.
For aver, the other side. Yeah. What is a sin? It
Well,
essentially.
chet is to miss the mark.
What? Chet is miss the mark. Lachti is to miss the mark. But lahavir basically means you're taking energy from one. You're diverting. A diversion. You're diverting. That's avera, which means you're taking the spiritual energy that God gave you for a positive purpose, and you're taking that energy and investing it in something negative. So you're just passing it back. And what's teshuva? Bring it back. Return. Okay, so every time a person, so this is the opposite of a sin. What's a sin? A sin is you're mixing physical and spiritual in a negative way. You're taking the spiritual energy that God gave you and you're investing it in the physical, but who's in charge? The physical is in charge. And the spiritual energy is trapped in the physical experience. So you're getting a mixing of physical and spiritual, but in an unwholesome way. This is going to correct. We're once again going to mix the physical and the spiritual in this story. But it's that Jacob is going to be blessed with the blessings of materialism in order to serve God. So now you're mixing the physical and the spiritual, but you're doing it in a wholesome way. You're doing it in a way where the spiritual is in charge and the physical serves the spiritual. That's the mirror. It's a mirror story. And there the mixture was in a negative way. Here the mixture is in a positive way. But again, to mix it in a positive way is beyond knowledge. By the way, to mix it in a negative way is also beyond knowledge. A sin is not rational. And by the Talmud says a person cannot sin unless they have a spirit of folly, because rationally it doesn't make sense. But this also, mixing it in the positive sense, also doesn't make sense because logically the physical and spiritual are a contradiction. And that's why the Jacob has to be blessed in a way that defies. It's not the dot of Isaac. It's not. Isaac has no awareness, logical awareness of what he's doing here. He thinks he's blessing Esau. He's blessing Jacob. Okay. I want to say one more point on this theme, but I want to read another verse. So we'll make progress. We're actually going to read a verse inside today. This is great.
Can I ask just
Yes,
one question? So
yes.
when you say something is beyond logic, it's beyond, what is that? Is that Hashem?
There's a lot that's beyond logic. Logic is only one dimension of reality. Even in the human
So
soul,
you're like, when
there's
you do
pleasure, there's
something
will.
that's- You do something that's beyond what you can rationalize
Yeah.
and think, who's controlling that?
Well, but it's not your soul, but your soul has different dimensions. And logic is not the highest one. Your motivation is pleasure, is will, and then you get the logic, and then emotion, and then action. The 5 levels of the soul, generally speaking, is you're going to say nefesh racham sham chaya yechida. So you start with pleasure, then you go to will, then you get to logic. Logic is only the 3rd dimension. If you want to talk about the essence of the soul is deeper. So we do a lot of things that logically don't necessarily add up. If you ask me to sit with a spreadsheet and say, does this make sense, pros and cons? No, but I'm doing it anyway because in either my intuition or my will or my pleasure, I'm not talking about negative things, positive things, right? So you say, I'm very committed and devoted to somebody else. You say, why? Logically, does it add up? Do you get back of how much you're investing? You wake up at night, you take care of your child, they're crying, you can't sleep. Logically, this makes sense? It doesn't make sense. You talk about, that's why logically, a lot of people don't want to get married, don't want to have children, because especially millennials, nobody wants to have children. Logically, it doesn't make sense. It's too expensive, too much work, you can't sleep in them, doesn't make sense. And you know what? If they put out a spreadsheet here, they probably can convince me that doesn't make sense. But it's not the point. That's not why we operate. We have things that are much deeper than logic. And go ahead.
Excuse me, Cliff.
You're saying it does make sense. Go ahead.
Conversely, it makes a lot of sense.
Yes.
I mean, my parents took care of me when I was young.
Yeah.
And I took care of them when they were old.
Okay, so that's the counter argument. But I'm saying something else. You're saying it does make sense. I'm saying it doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. That is not our only motivator. We do things that are deeper than we have meaning, and we have connections, and we have emotions, and we have will, and we have pleasure. You get nachas, you get pleasure from giving. But logically, does it make sense? Would your accountant approve of this? Of course not. Accountant would say, instead of investing in your child, invest in your stock portfolio. That's what the accountant would say. But we don't operate. Not everything has to be done through logic. In fact, a lot of what we do is, unfortunately, some things are below logic, but a lot of things are beyond logic. And that's wonderful.
Nas Evanishma came into the world.
That's right.
And with that
That's right.
came doing things that we don't necessarily comprehend. You shall do, and then you shall listen. Came into the world with Moshe Rabbeinu and the giving of the Torah. So we are still, in some way or another, part of that concept when we do things without comprehending them.
Right. Or in other words, even if it doesn't, I don't know how it works. How does it work that I'm going to get involved in materialism and still not, and be able to raise it and it won't pull me down? Logically, it doesn't necessarily make sense.
We have a conscious and a subconscious.
Right.
And maybe God puts certain stuff in the subconscious. And that's stronger, actually. That's what makes our decision. Unless our conscious says overrides it, which is very difficult. I think God puts a whole, like a tape recording inside us. And that dictates a lot.
Right.
Which is not logical.
Right.
To
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And God is infinite. We don't even know all the answers to them.
Yeah.
We know a few answers, but God
Yeah.
may have completely another way.
Yeah. I'm not
A
that.
lot of it depends also upon where a person's holding. If a person is cold and calculating and intellectual, and they're not heart-based, well, yes, they're gonna be more not Nasa and Ishma, they're gonna be Nishma and Nasa.
Right.
And so, it varies with
Right.
people. There's
Right.
not one standard thing
Yeah, I will.
that people hold by. Some people would just basically be very calculating and never undertake anything if they're less connected to their emotions.
Right. So we can go, once we get into human psychology, we'll be here all day. But I want, no, but I wanted to just take it back for 1 second. Then Vicky will say something and then I want 5 minutes left. I want to read another verse and connect it all. I'm talking not so much from the human perspective, but from the divine perspective. God needs this blessing to come down. God needs that Jacob should get blessing Jacob should get a blessing for materialism. That's what has to happen. Kabbalah is very interested in the processes through which the flow comes from the spiritual to the physical. Fascinated by that. Seder Shtalshalut, evolution of the worlds, 10 Sfirot, everything comes from the infinity to the finite. How that happens, that's the subject of the Kabbalah. So the Kabbalah says, okay, we have to get the physical blessing to Jacob. Is there a path of rationality? No, it cannot happen through anyone's conscious mind because the concept makes no sense. So what do? How is it going to come into this world? It has to bypass rationality. That's how it comes into this world. What does it mean? How does it play out? It plays out. Isaac blesses Jacob with materialism without knowing that he's blessing Jacob with materialism. Now we see how the flow comes, how the flow can come from the spiritual, the source of the physical blessing can reach Isaac, because even though it defies logic, and because it defies logic, the way it comes into the world, it has to be in a way that the person is giving the blessing is doing it without logic, without awareness. That's what the Kabbalah is interested in. The Kabbalah is interested in the processes through which the blessing comes down. So it has to be without doubt. It has to be in a way that he doesn't have knowledge. Why? Because the concept is beyond knowledge. That's what I'm trying to get at.
It seems like there's a lot of resistance in this world to things happening in a true emistic way. If you look at even the giving of the Torah, all the angels rebelled against God, say, don't give the Torah to these people. And Moshe had to go make an argument for why the people needed to have received Torah.
Yeah.
And, even with the creation of David, has to come down through Ruth, and Ruth is a Moabite convert. She has to go through a transitional time period where she alters the way that she thinks, so that ultimately a David could be born that is like ultimately the Mashiach.
Okay,
It's
let me
gonna
jump in,
turn
John.
people over.
Jonathan, let me jump in only because I want to conclude, but just to summarize everything you're saying. This structure, the spiritual structure of the world, and some things don't fit the structure. So they have to come in a way that bypasses the structure. And if you look at the birth of David, which is the birth of Mashiach, it doesn't follow the structure of law, doesn't follow the structure of what we would call ethics and morality. Why? Because this is something, the soul of David and the soul of Mashiach defy the structure. And therefore, the way they come into the world defy structure. Same thing with Judah and Tamar, by the way, David's great-grandfather. Judah and Tamar. So that's the same thing happening here. The structure is logic, but here it defies logic. Vicky, you're going to excuse me, please, 2 minutes. I'll take your question at 10:30. I will have to read this verse. Okay. So the verse reads as follows. The verse reads. Fine, he falls for it. He says, "Are you Esav?" He says, "I'm Esav." Oh, let's share the screen. Let's share the screen. And excuse me, he eats, he drinks, everything is fine and dandy. He's about to bless him. Verse 28, he blesses him. Verse 28 reads, "And may the Lord give you," etc. Verse 20 says, let's read to verse 27. And he came closer. I'm sorry, verse 26. And his father Isaac said to him, "Please come closer and kiss me, my son." According to the Kabbalah, the kiss makes the flow, the spiritual flow go. Okay, fine, wonderful. 27. And he came closer and he kissed him. And he smelled the fragrance of his garments. And he blessed him. And he said, "Behold, the fragrance of my son is like the fragrance of a field which the Lord has blessed." What on earth is happening here? What is this? So he was wearing perfume, he was wearing cologne. What happened? He says he smells the fragrance of his garments. Now, this also goes back, the Medrash takes us back to the Garden of Eden. They say the garments are the garments of Nimrod, which is really the garments of Adam. I'm not going there right now. I'm staying consistent with what we were talking till now. What is garments? So one Kabbalistic way of reading this, garments is the external. Garments is not the actual person. Garments is what you wear to use for a function, to go out in the world. It's cold outside, you put on a garment. You have to meet somebody, you put on a garment. But it's not really your essence. Okay, so that's the spirit. That's the spiritual meaning of garments. How does this tie into what we're talking about? He says all of the physical blessing that we have is like wealth, and any other physical thing we have is supposed to be like garments. Meaning, it's not me. It's something I use. Right? Some people they define themselves by their wealth. If I'm wealthy, that's who I am. Now in America, you say, "What? Tell me something about yourself." "I'm a lawyer. I'm an accountant. I'm a banker." I didn't ask you what you do. I asked you who you are. But that's the way we do. We define ourselves by our possessions or by our occupation. So what according from the perspective of the Kabbalah, your beged, everything you possess and everything you own is not you. That's your garment. Don't talk to me about your garments. Who are you? Okay, fine. What are we saying? We're saying that Isaac comes here, and Isaac senses a smell, and smell represents the atmosphere. He smells Jacob's garments, and what does he sense? He says, "Reach beni," the scent of my son is like a field which God blessed. What is he saying? He's saying, I could sense that this person, his garments, which means the physical possessions that he has, are blessed by Hashem. In other words, there's spiritual meaning and spiritual purpose to the garments. It's very strange. Someone comes to you and he says, "Kiss me," and he kisses you and he says, "Oh, you have beautiful garments." Talk to me about the person. No, here Jacob, it's fascinating that right before Isaac blesses Jacob and he gives him the blessings for materialism, the verse before he says, "Your garments are the garments that God blessed." In other words, he's saying that I sense that you will use the materialism, your materialism, which is field, which is outside. The materialism is blessed by Hashem. And that's the connection. And that's the connection at the next verse. Okay, now you can get the blessings. So is he processing this in his conscious mind? Not necessarily. But you see that what's happening here again and again, you see that theme, that even the garments are, and he's surprised. He's like, "Wow, you have beautiful garments." And like Rashi, he's surprised. The garments have beautiful smell. And the garments are blessed by Hashem. They smell like a field that was blessed by Hashem. By the way, what is a field that it's blessed by Hashem? Sages say this means that the spirit of Gan Eden, the scent of Gan Eden came in with Jacob. What does that mean? Again, going us to Garden of Eden before the sin. We'll continue that. We could talk about that next week. What happens in Garden of Eden before the sin? All the physical possessions, all the physical life, the procreation and eating and everything you did in the Garden of Eden, you felt that was for a spiritual purpose. That was the state of the Garden of Eden. So now we're going back to the Garden of Eden because he says, you smell like the field which God blessed, which is the Garden of Eden. But what happens in the Garden of Eden? The garments, meaning the physical, is blessed by Hashem, is for a spiritual purpose. So this ties everything we said in the last 32 minutes. So go ahead, Vicky. We have 60 seconds for a question, and then all other questions we'll do next week because we have to go and study with the wonderful children who are waiting in the other room. Go ahead, Vicky. Sorry for you waiting. I just had to squeeze
Oh,
in.
no, that's okay. I had my hand up.
Okay.
Go, and I think we're talking about the same thing. I just didn't want us to feel guilty going into Pshat, because that's the greatness of Jacob, because that ties the Kabbalistic interpretation to Pshat, because his wisdom in overlooking things and giving everything in Hashem's hands kind of signifies that he feels that aroma, he feels that spirit. He may not necessarily put it in a tangible way, but leaving everything in Hashem's hands actually plays out, and this is something that we can learn from Jacob. So that's
Yeah, so the end of the class connects to the beginning of the class, because that theme comes up again, which is, in some sense, he's taking a hands-off approach. He's letting things play out. He senses that God is involved. He's letting things play out. He's not fully investigating it logically, and he's taking a hands-off approach. But again, there's the multiple ways to read this. Today, we focused on the Kabbalistic approach, just to tie it all together. And the Kabbalistic approach is, what's happening here is a process that is not necessarily logical, that you can connect the physical and the spiritual will overpower and control the physical, unlike what happened in the Garden of Eden, that the physical overpowers the spiritual. Okay, so to connect it in a wholesome way, that is something that logically you wouldn't expect it to happen. And that's why, look at what other religions do. They try to separate the two domains because they feel like the physical will corrupt the spiritual. But we are in the business of the spiritual sanctifying the physical. And this is something, and therefore, because it defies logic, it comes down in a way that defies logic. And what's the expression? The expression is, where do you see this? You see this, that he says, the garments are blessed by God. Right? The garments are blessed by God, which means I can sense that the physical world, thank you so much. The physical possessions could be done in a holy way. So again, sorry for the cutting everything short, but unfortunately, we live in the physical world, so everything is bound by time and space, at least in the time being. And so we'll continue the discussion, God willing, in good health next Sunday in good health. Thank you all for joining. Wonderful week, wonderful day.
Thank you very much.